Hi, I'm Francois Gency, and we're here at Hempstead Assembly of God with the president of Valley Forge, David Kim. He delivered a very, very powerful word today, and we're going to just go into and ask him some questions. So, Mr. Kim, Dr. Kim, can I call you Dr. Kim?
You can call me whatever you want. You just call me David.
All right, David. I know that in your message you spoke about your father being a missionary, and he planted church, and you grew up in West Africa. But you have also answered the call of ministry, and you've done some really great work in your life or time as it comes to missions. I want you to take me back to the moment where God spoke to you and said, I'm calling you to do this work. And how was that? Like, take me back to that moment.
Sure. I think the best way for me to explain that would be that because I did grow up as a missionary's kid, so I was always surrounded by faith, by Christianity, by church, by work for the Lord. And sometimes growing up in that environment, you can get confused about your own faith, and you just kind of assume that what you grew up is yours. It wasn't later on in life that actually, I'm an alum of Valley Forge, and so it was actually in a chapel service at the University of Valley Forge where I really encountered the presence of the Lord for myself, and I experienced not only healing, but really a call to follow Him. But it's not for me a specific, like, that moment was it. Mm-hmm. For me, it's been a journey.
Right.
So I think that God speaks and reveals Himself. It reveals Himself through processes, events, different moments in life. I could have never imagined at that moment when I was 19, giving my life to the Lord, that I would be president of a college, right? You can't imagine that. But also, I was a pastor, mm-hmm. missionary, school principal, businessman. All of those journeys or all of those steps were ordained by God. And so although you can have a moment where God does speak to you and call you, I really look at the call of God as more of a journey of mm-hmm. learning to follow Jesus mm-hmm. as He leads and guides your life.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's a verse that I allow my mm-hmm. son to say, Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6, and it's trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all of your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. So in that moment that you gave your heart to the Lord and you trusted Him and you made the decision to acknowledge Him, as you've described, you've allowed Him to guide you on this journey with your walk with Christ.
But I would say me allowing God to do that is for me, it's a little misleading for me, because I really believe it's the grace of God and His mercy that allows to see His steps that He's directing.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's not like I'm gonna allow, I'm gonna commit, I'm gonna do this. Mm-hmm. No, it's really the hand of God and the grace of God and the mercy of God that allows me to see His leading.
Oh, wow.
And so all leading, all guiding is the work of the Lord in our lives.
That is amazing. I have never understood it from that perspective, but thank you for that. That's amazing. And on this journey where God's grace is leading you and guiding you, I'm sure, in me being a pastor's kid and me being in ministry for a while.
You're a PK? Now it makes a lot of sense. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
But I understand there are difficulties in ministry, and there's some real ditches and bumps in the road when it comes to that. My question is, how do you deal with those difficulties? Because there are all sorts of different difficulties, but more so, how do you stay grounded? How do you not let those mountains and those trials discourage you from going further?
Sure. So a lot of times when people face adversity or challenges in life, they look at different kind of verses, and that's fine. I think obviously the Lord gives us encouragement and strength through different scriptures for sure. But I always refer the people that I disciple or the people that I minister to, or even our students at Valley Forge, like you can't go to Valley Forge and graduate and not know this word. This word is abide. Okay, and so if you were to come on the campus and ask, hey, what's the word that's spoken about the most? Everybody will tell you, okay? But it's from John chapter 15, verse 1 through 5 and beyond, right? But verse 5 talks about how if you remain in me, and I will remain in you, and you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And so if you were talking about being grounded, that word remain is about really staying and penetrated. It's extravagant time in the presence and the person of Jesus Christ. So that John 15 talks about, I am the vine, you are the branches. It's really about being lodged and being connected and staying and learning to stay in the presence of God. And so abide, that word is really, is learning to spend extraordinary time, whatever that means. I know I get a lot of people. Is that 5 minutes? 1 hour? It's not abiding just alone time in the morning, but it's abiding in obedience, abiding in purpose, abiding in mission. So it's really learning to commune with Jesus all the time.
That is amazing. And as you mentioned before, you being, that word coming from you being the president of Valley Forge, and everybody knows that, Valley Forge, from what I know, is a really amazing institution, and I'm happy to be sitting here and honored to be sitting with the president. What would you say, just so everyone could know, what is the mission and the vision that drives Valley Forge as a university and for pushing the kingdom and the gospel of Jesus Christ?
Sure, that's a really common question that I get, and it really, our institution is centered really around the Great Commission, which is make disciples. So everything that we do in the institution is really about making disciples that multiply disciples, right? So in order to do that, you do need a community that understands making disciples. And, and so a lot of Christian universities and colleges, we talk a lot about having a Christian environment, going to a Christian school with Christian professors. I want you to know that just because you go to a Christian school and you're taught by Christians with Christian content doesn't necessarily mean you're going to learn to follow Jesus. A disciple is made by a disciple. So I'm going to say that again. Disciples make disciples. Right. Not programs, not classroom, right. Not content. If that was the case, Jesus would have sat his 12 disciples for 3 years and taught them in a synagogue. Right. And then send them out. That's not what Jesus did. If you look at the disciples' lives, they spent time with Jesus, right, learning from the Master. I was on a quest and a journey to find out if the Great Commission is make disciples, like you need to know who is a disciple. Like, what does a disciple do, and how do you make one? Right. Okay, so if you come to Valley Forge, I'll teach you how to do that. I was about to say, because I was going to say, could you just give us a little insight? So I'll tell you the definition or the biblical understanding of what a disciple is. A disciple is a follower of Christ who learns to do what the Master does. A follower of Christ who learns to do what the Master does. That statement, that definition is really loaded with depth and tremendous meaning and challenge to all of us. And so if you ask, what is Valley Forge? Why does it exist? What are we doing? What are we breathing every day? It's learning to make disciples. What's a disciple? One who follows Christ and learns to do what the Master does. And so how do you raise up a generation who follows Christ and learns to do what the Master does?
That's amazing. That's amazing. And for those young folk who are watching this interview right now, and or the parents of young folk who are watching this interview right now that would that are taking interest in, you know, the mission and the vision of Valley Forge, what is a good process or a good way to get started to get into the institution or know more about the institution?
Sure.
How would they know about that?
It's really simple. You know, I think the best way to do it is to go visit our website, which is valleyforge.edu. Valleyforge.edu. Now, one thing to keep in mind is a lot of people have different misconceptions about a private Christian university. We are a very affordable school. That's one of our missions, to keep the cost down. And so the U.S. News and World Report just put out a report that we were one of the top best value schools in the North. And so we were acknowledged for it. We were also voted for social mobility. It makes sense, right? Best value and social mobility, which is a lot of our Pell Grant recipients, which would be low income families, were students who come from low income families, were able to graduate. And so we were acknowledged for that. And I think the final thing is we're a very diverse institution. The white population is actually 45%, and it's 55% non-white. And so our Hispanic community and our black community is about even, around 20% each. And so you can imagine, if you come on campus, it's very diverse.
That's amazing.
And so anyway, that's Valley Forge.
That's amazing. Dr. Kim, we thank you for coming, and
Thank you
thank you for just sharing the word and sharing your journey with Christ and giving all us this information. It was an amazing time. This is Francois Gency, Hempstead Assembly of God, and we will see you next time.